Hey everyone, Andrew Slipper Brown here, tour manager and audio engineer based out of Toronto, Canada. Really excited to be part of the Locked Up with the Digico video series. I've got here a Digico S21 console that I've been locked up with for about 2 months. Compliments of Soundbox Productions out of Hamilton, Ontario. So thanks guys for setting me up with this. Picked it up a couple days before we got locked down, and it's been really great to have at home and to be able to just experiment with some new workflows, new plugins, just to be able to keep doing sound while we've been kind of locked down here. Really excited to share with you my workflows. I have toured with this console a number of times in North America with a couple different artists. It's been a really great desk to have on the road. One of the reasons I gravitated toward this console was primarily for its size and weight. Super lightweight, super compact, really easy to get out of any venue you can imagine. I've had it in arenas and small clubs. I've had it in buses and trailers. I've had it in vans and trailers, and it's been great for all of them. You can't argue with the price point. We don't always have a tour budget that can take out a super top end console. So to be able to have something on the lower end of the price scale, but still pack all the features and tools and usability that this console does, and sound as good as it does, is a really huge thing. So yeah, what I'm looking to do is kind of show you my workflows on the console. I'm going to show you how I build my starting templates. I always operate from a template. So I'll show you how I build that. I'm going to show you how I take that template and turn it into a show file, and hopefully get into some more of the complicated or technical things you can do on the console, if you want to call them that. Show some waves integration, things like that. So first off, let's just start from scratch, building a show file. So I've got the offline software here. This is completely reset. So the first thing I would generally do, I guess, I should explain that the way the offline software works, if you've never seen it, is this is your screen B and this is your screen A. So on the S21, there's two screens, 10 handles per screen. So that's what you're looking at here. So this is a master screen, screen B. So what we'll do first is get my macros going. Now, macros on the S series, they're not as user definable as the SD series, but still cover the basis for most anything you want to be able to grab really quick. They live up here in this top bar, and you can choose as many as you want from this menu to go up here and just to have easily accessible all the time. So I like to have my save session up here, update snapshot, and my session menu. Session menu is basically a view of your snapshot list and your file management and that kind of thing. I like to have quick access to my graphs, my effects menu. I like to have quick access to my virtual sound check tools, listen to copied audio and sources, my matrix. Love to be able to lock my console and walk away, and global tap tempo on and off. So that's what I generally have up there all the time. Like you can see, a lot of different options, a lot of places that these can come in handy, but for my template, this is where I start. So we're done that. So moving forward, the console fully reset, you can see starts out with 48 mono channels. They're all feeding the master bus by default. And everything is just laid out right in front of you. So you've got all your auxes, your groups set up, 4 mono, 4 stereo auxes, 4 mono, 4 stereo groups, 8 matrices, 2 solo buses. It's all right there. So realistically, from a show reset, you can jump in and do a mix right away. I like to use a template just because I have some different routing techniques I like to use, and I like to be able to, walk into a room with this desk and load a template, start from scratch, and know where everything is going, and just be able to get doing sound as fast as possible. So that's why I kind of always operate from my templates here. So first things first, let's get our matrices dialed in. I always kind of operate under the assumption that I won't have access to a processor. When I do, it's awesome. When I don't, I like to have it all set up on my matrices. So we'll set up by doing a PA left and PA right matrix, a sub and fill mono matrix. I'm going to do a record matrix. I'm going to leave 7 spare as a whole. It can become, anything you might need on a show day, whether it be a bar fill or, maybe they have a balcony mono fill that you have to put up. Super easy to grab that and throw it back into your file when you need it. Matrix 8 will be my smart reference. Now I'm going to put a couple extra spaces in here so it wraps the text down. If you don't put those spaces in, sometimes it splits the words up. So I just like to get ahead of it and kind of wrap that text down. So that's Matrix is labeled. We'll go ahead and gang these stereo sources. So really easy to gang. That way you have control of your EQs across multiple things, or your comps, or whatever's going on, and it gangs your faders, of course, and your mutes. You can see here that the gangs are set up because of these little colored lines above the channels there. So gangs are done. So we're in good shape there. Moving forward, let's take care of our bus routing. So I like to operate with 9 stereo groups and a master bus. Default is 8 groups. So let's go ahead and snag one of these auxes and turn that into a bus. All you got to do is go to your mode, select that. It's now a group, and we're going to name this shell dry. Again, with those extra spaces to wrap the text. So worth noting that when you do this, it becomes the first group in your group list. So when you change an aux to a group, it becomes the first group in the group list. So that's why I made this what would be my group 1, which is the first side of a parallel compression, parallel drum bus. So I'm going to move this over and get it into position. Oh, there we go. And I got to go back and edit. There we go. All right, we'll bump all of these down. We'll back to the other side here. I really do find personally that moving stuff around on this console is much easier on the console itself. But for the sake of the demonstration and trying to make this as clear as possible, I'm doing it on the offline just to make it easy to see. I do have a camera set up on the console, of course, but this just makes some of this more finer detail stuff a lot easier to look at. So now that we have that moved over in line, you can see I put it in the place of group 1 and bumped everything else down. And again, that is because it becomes the first group. So there's that shell dry. So you can see if I just made that into whatever my group 9 would be, then it would be group 9, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So I'm a little bit OCD about that kind of stuff. So I like to see this going on in the right place, or living in the right place. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these groups labeled up. We'll have my shell crush, brass, drums, and swing. All right, so quick explanation as to what these buses are. I've got some parallel compression on my drums. I've got my overheads, cymbal mics, that kind of thing all goes to a brass bus. These 3 buses feed my drum bus. The next 4 buses feed my all bus or my band bus. And then I have a vocal bus. Both the vocal and the all bus will feed the master bus. So I'll show that in a bit more detail in a second, but that's what's going on here. Next up, I just got to make these buses into stereo. So this is another example of something that is quicker on the console, but still not too bad if you're on a laptop. All right, so they're all stereo now. So let's go up and actually set that routing up. So we're gonna have our shell dry. We're gonna go to the channel for it. Gonna go to the group assign. We're gonna select that, shell dry. You can see whatever group you're selected on is always gonna be darker than the rest. We'll go ahead and route that to drums. Shell crush to drums. The brass to the drums. And then drums to all. Now the 3 instrument buses will also go to the all bus. The reason they're labeled instrument 1, 2, and 3 is because they can become whatever I need them to become. So if I have bass guitar and keys on a show, then I can rename those bass guitar and keys. It just makes, for this step of routing to the master and have everything lined up the way I want to see it, it just makes that a placeholder name for that situation. So easy to set up and easy to get going once you walk into a room and need to get started. So we'll get the all bus, route that to the master, and the vocal bus, route that to the master, and we're all set. So you can see down here that these all have this little kind of cross symbol here. This indicates that it is now routed to a bus. So as an example, if I unroute my vocal bus, that symbol will be gone. So just a visual representation that that is done so you can see it. So there we have it. So all of our groups are set up in stereo, labeled the way I want to see them, routed to the master bus. We have our matrices set up and labeled. So let's go ahead and set up our matrix mixer. Now, the reason I'm waiting till now to do that is because what I like to do, well, there's two reasons. One, it makes it easy to read everything in your channel output. So that's a huge help. Two is I also like to use my groups as matrix inputs, and I'll explain why in just a second. So first off, we'll go ahead and get our master left right set up as inputs to our matrix here. And we'll go ahead and route our master left right to our PA and our record matrices. So we'll just spin those up. Kind of finicky to do this on a trackpad. So it's really easy to do on the touch and turn knob. I'm just going to leave it. There we go. We can edit that when we get to the console. So those are all set. Go ahead and do our sub fill and our smart reference. Get those dialed in. They're going to be at -6 because they're all mono summed. Oh, so finicky. All right, close enough. So moving forward, like I said, I like to set my groups up as matrix inputs. You know, there's a lot of reasons why I do this. It's a template. It's just another thing to have done that I don't need to do later. So there might be a scenario where I walk into a room and maybe it's a super loud stage and all I need in the front fill is the vocal, you know, or maybe I need to set up a quick record bus and maybe all the artist wants to hear is just everything but the vocal. You know, so it just gives me some flexibility. Quite often, if I have audience mics, I'll patch them as inputs too, and then I can route them to the record bus and then have some audience mixed in with the record. You know, of course, you got to be careful about potential phase situations there if your audience mics are far away, but you know, super flexible. And again, coming back to being a template, it's just set and ready to go. So that's all set and ready to go. Let's take care of some graphic EQs. Now, I like to avoid using graphs as much as possible, but they're handy to have inserted, just ready to go. So let's put a pair across my PA left and right. This is already set in send and return mode. So that means it's going to patch the send and return for me, so I don't have to do it twice, which is a really nice feature. So we'll get that strapped in. We're going to put a monograph across our fills and a stereo. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to put a stereo graph across our vocal bus. Now, the reason I like to do that is because you never know when you're going to have that adventurous vocalist who wants to get out in front of the PA and put on a really, really great show. So I'd rather have to hack up those feedback frequencies on just that voice just to get by if that ever were to happen. And then be able to fine tune it later on in a show. I mean, quite often, you know if your vocalist is going to walk out in front of a PA, but everyone has their moments, and you know, best to just have that there so you can grab it quickly if you need it. And I'd rather do that than hack up my entire master bus. You know, so it's just something I like to have kind of set up. So moving forward, we'll go ahead and gang our graphs together. So we'll grab the graph we want, add gang. So that's PA left right ganged. And we will grab our vocal left right bus ganged. And that is the graphs set up, routed, and ganged. Now you can see here again another visual representation of some routing you've got set up. The B indicates that I have something routed into insert B and turned on. So just another place you can look to make sure you know where things are going. So that's pretty much a great start for the file. Like I mentioned earlier, super easy to move things around on the console itself. So to get the rest of this file kind of in place, I'm going to jump over to the console and get things moved around. So this is pretty much exactly where we left off on the offline software. So I'm going to jump into edit mode here, and we're just going to start moving some stuff around. So my file is designed to be a 32 channel template. Reason being is 9 times out of 10 when I have this console, 32 channels covers everything I need. We still end up with 5 channels left in my template the way it's laid out. So though they can become shouts, they can become additional inputs. They're just down here in the unassigned channels area if needed. The file is set up with 6 aux sends for effects and 6 returns built into channels. Of course, these can be changed out to a wet dry insert effect if you need to spare some extra channels. But again, under most circumstances, this file setup in this configuration has worked out that I don't need to change too much in that regard. So what I like to see is all my channel inputs, and then I like to see my effects returns on layer 1 and 2. That way, if you are in a throw and go scenario, everything that you need input-wise is right in front of you. Next up, we'll take care of getting rid of some other stuff I don't need on the surface. So matrix 7, our spare matrix, can disappear. We'll move down our solos to another layer here. This will become a utility layer, so let's build that up. I've got a squawk aux, which is basically whenever I have a squawk or a shout box, I like to be able to route multiple channels to it. So if I have a band on ears, for instance, between songs and a sound check, I'll take them out of the PA, but have them routed to my squawk or shout box that's sitting on top of my console so that they can talk amongst themselves between songs and not be concerned about anyone in the venue hearing what they're saying, or if they say something that maybe shouldn't be said in the room, the crew and the rest of us can maintain open communications, but maybe we're not ending up with any foot and mouth syndrome there. So just something I like to do and have ready to go if I need it. I do always route my monitor and front of house talkback into it. Monitor, of course, so I can hear what they're saying if they have to chat with me, and front of house talkback to make sure it works. I hate talking into the mic and not kind of hearing it come out of a speaker, so it's just a personal thing that I do. So now we have our kind of tuning and utility layer built here. So this is all our matrices. I've got my smart mic and oscillator input and a playback or iPod channel. I'm gonna go ahead and move these over just so that they are in line with my inputs. Another little OCD thing. And now I'm gonna go ahead and move around some banks. So instead of having to move all the channels around, I can just move the whole bank. So I like to see all my inputs and then my masters and groups and my matrices. And then I have my effects sends kind of buried. Reason being that once they're set, I generally kind of don't do anything with them. The mutes are normally in mute groups when they need to be. So they're kind of set and forget. And then control groups live down here at the bottom because on my template, they're not assigned to anything. They're just there waiting and ready to go. So as the show develops, I can assign things to control groups as I need them and move them around the layout as I need it. So that's kind of our starting point as far as layout. So next up, why don't we jump into our effects? So like I said, I've got 6 effects sends and returns. The way I patch everything is a mono to stereo send and return. So we'll go ahead and set that up. A couple of these are already mono, so we just got to change these over to stereo. There we go. All right. And let's patch them to our effects rack. So what we'll do is we'll go to our output, the aux direct output to our effect. Now, because I'm doing a mono to stereo effect, it's a double route. So aux 1, or in my case, my snare reverb, will go to effect rack input 1 left and right. So it's a double patch. We'll do that all the way across for all these. Now, there's not much reason why I choose to do this as opposed to a stereo aux. It doesn't chew up any DSP or anything like that. It doesn't cut down on channel usage. I've just always done it this way and I've never felt the need to change. So that's why I do that. So they're all routed out. Let's go ahead and go to our return channels. So we're going to make these all stereo. And again, you can see here with some of the stuff that I did on the offline, just how much quicker it is just to move your hand around to set that up. So for these channels, we'll select it, go to our source. It's going to be our effects rack is the source. We can do a ripple route here because it is going to be a 1-to-1 patch stereo. So we'll select our first rack, channel 1, and channel 6 rack, hit route, and now it has ripple routed all of our effects sends. So Very straightforward, very easy. That's patched up and good to go. While we're in patch mode here, really quick, I'm just gonna set my oscillator input. So I've chosen the input, internal oscillator, and I'm gonna choose pink noise. So that's set. Now we have pink noise going there. As far as patching and routing goes, that's pretty much all I get into on my template. I don't do too much more than that because obviously IO will change. So I just kind of leave those kind of key things routed and set up. We'll get more into the routing in a little while here. So next up, we'll actually build our effects rack. Empty effects rack right now. We'll go ahead and just set these up. So my snare verb, in my template, I always start out with a drum plate. My kit reverb, which is a reverb for all of my drums, I always start out with the percussion room. So my snare always gets its own independent verb, and then I send all of my drums to the kit verb, just to kind of give the whole kit a bit of ambience. My vocal verb, I always start out with the wood room. I don't know why, it's just what's in my template, and it just tends to work. I kind of like that drier, tighter sound on a vocal most of the time. You know, if I need a bigger, longer, wetter, fuller kind of thing, I change it out. Sometimes instead of having a vocal verb and a BG verb, I'll just have a long and a short. It just depends on what the artist calls for. For my doubler, I always just start with a chorus. Sometimes I do actually jump over and use the stereo thicken, but I just find if I'm in a pinch and I need to get that doubler going quick, the chorus is just a quicker starting point. And for my delay, it's always just the studio delay. BG verb, in the template that I go to 9 times out of 10 for this console, is always just the warm hall set up and good to go. So I guess you could kind of say that I kind of do have like a shorter and a longer verb already set up. Labels is what it is. So that's done. So all effects are routed. All our bussing's routed. Our matrices are set. We've got an oscillator going on. Let me check my notes right quick and just see what else I kind of want to touch on here. I think we're in pretty good shape. What I will do for now is I'm going to go ahead and take my record matrix, and for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to patch that output to my computer here that we're recording on. So I have that set up on the UB MADI. Oh, wrong one. I'll demonstrate this in more depth later on in the video. I'm just kind of getting this done for, there we go, perfect. So let's go ahead and test our routing. So one thing to know about this desk is all of your meters at the top of your channel are your pre-fade meters or your input meters. So I guess they're right after the preamp if you were to look at a signal flow diagram. The meter at the bottom is your post-fade, post-mute meter. So you can see I have input coming into the oscillator channel. That's the internal oscillator, but nothing coming out. So if I push this fader up, you'll see that this meter goes up at the bottom. If I mute it, it goes away. So this is really important to note. If you're doing a line check and you're on this screen, you will not see meters. So in line check scenarios, you always want to be looking at your top of channel meters. Carrying on, my oscillator is routed to my left-right master. If I push that left-right master up, you're going to see this hitting all of my matrices. It's not hitting my fill matrix because we changed it there. It's hitting my record left-right. And if I push this up, there you go, a little bit of pink noise. So routing from the master forward is working fine. Next up, let's go ahead and test our bus routing, make sure everything's going to the right place. So I'm going to unassign my oscillator from the master bus. I'm going to push up. I'll wait on that. So let's go ahead and send it to shell dry. So my oscillator is now hitting the top of the shell dry channel. If I push up this fader, it's going to be hitting the bottom of my shell dry channel now. And the drum bus, which is perfect. Push up the drum bus fader through the bus, out to the all bus, push the all bus up, now hitting the master. So I've definitely been in a situation where I've routed things and they don't come through, and it's just because that fader is down or muted. So always worth knowing how the metering works. So let's go ahead and just cycle this oscillator through all my buses. So that's going proper. Brass to drums to all, yeah. Drums to all is working. All the instruments through the all bus to the master bus are working fine. And if I route to the vocal bus, it hits the master. So all the busing right now is working. Next up, let's test our effects routing. The way to send to an aux, super simple. Press and grab the aux. Your touch and turn knob down here below the channel will turn to the color of whatever you are trying to do on the screen. So all auxes show up in purple. Push the fader up. All the auxes also default to a post fade send. So that's good to know. So let's push that up. We're selected on our snare reverb. When I turn this, it'll automatically turn it on. Turn that up. If I go down to my send, you'll see that we're sending. Push all my effects send faders up. Jump to my returns, and you're seeing the return there. So if I were to push that up, this effects return is routed to the master bus. Hitting the master bus, bus to matrices, you've got noise. So everything seems to be working fine. All the route inputs were, all the effects routes were the same. So just for good measure, we'll jump to the last aux, spin that up, go to our returns, we see it there. So all things good in the world of patching. So that's pretty much the template, good to go. Everything is in the place I like to see it. Everything is routed the way I like to see it to start. So let's carry on. Let's go ahead and turn this into an actual show. So to do that, what we would do with first is go ahead and take a look at our input list. Now I am using Waves Tracks Live today. I've got it here. This particular show file is from an artist by the name of Mother. I worked with them quite a bit last year in 2019, and they were gracious enough to let me use some of these tracks for this demonstration. The input count for this show is 32, but you will see that I also recorded my buses. So I got my drums all in vocal bus there and the left-right record. And I pretty much do this for all shows that I do. Just nice to have those references. And also, you know, if they want to do like a vocal up or vocal down mix after the fact or something like that, you can. So that's just something I do there. All we're going to focus on are these 32 input channels. So this is the input list here. And in the name of saving time, I already kind of have that dialed into the console. So here's the console set up with all the channel names in. You'll see that it's a 32 channel show, but it ends at what would have been handle number 27. And the reason for that is because there are a handful of stereo channels in here. So what I'm going to do is go to my edit. I'm going to pull out these spare channels that I don't need, pull them down to unassigned channels. Cleanliness is next to godliness. So they're out the way. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set the appropriate stereo channels. It's always important to do this before you route your inputs. That way, when you do your ripple route, everything comes down in line properly. If you do it after the fact, you'll have to go and change some of that routing to make sure everything lines up. So on this file, I've got a couple playback channels that are stereo, so we'll set that up. I have a Kemper guitar stereo channel, and I have 2 keyboards. So we're done there. Next up will be our full-on I/O routing. Super easy to do. The routing page is the same as everything else we've seen so far. So grab my first channel, grab the source, and you're going to go to your routing page. Now, the way the routing page is laid out is basically all your ports are down the side and all your I/O is right here. So if you select an input, it'll only give you input options. If you select an output, it only gives you output options. Now what you're seeing down the side here is all the internal stuff, local I/O, and then my DMI cards. Now, regularly you would probably see a DMI rack, or sorry, a MADI rack, like an SD rack or something like that, in one of these slots. I don't have that DMI card in the console, and I don't have a rack with me, so that's why you're seeing this DMI grayed out. So for the sake of demonstration, for the inputs, I'm just going to ripple route input 1 through 24 of the local analog inputs to my input channels, so you can just see how that works and see how it kind of populates with the stereo and mono channels. So I've selected that. Go ahead and hit route. And that's the 24 mic preamps to these channels. You can see now that they all have 0 dB indicators showing that the preamps are at 0. And you can see if I go to channel 10, we have mic source channel 10. And if I go to that first stereo channel, it's 11 and 12. If I made this stereo now, what would happen is this would just be 11 and I would end up with a broken route. So it would just be left 11, right empty, and then it would trickle down from that point on. So it's always important to make sure you do your stereo channels before you do your ripple route. It's easy enough to fix after the fact, but why do extra steps? So that's done. So let's go ahead now and let's set up our record, send, and returns. Super easy, same thing. We'll go back to our very first channel, go to our record, send, and return here, and we'll select the send. And just like our graphs, we have a send and return option. So we'll go to UB-MADI. Now the UB-MADI that we're using is built into the console. So you have a USB port on the back of the console. My laptop's feeding that USB. It's 48 channels of USB send and return, record and playback built in native to the console. So super awesome feature to have. You bringing virtual sound check into a small club so easily, it's just, you can't beat it. So we'll go ahead and ripple route our channels here. Send and return is selected. Select ripple route 1 through 32. Route that. Now it's giving us this error because we have already set up the records for our matrix when I was doing the demonstration of sending pink noise earlier. So that's why this is popping up, because this is telling us that it's going to overwrite those routes, which is fine. So we'll go ahead and click that. All right, so now you'll see that our record, oh, it didn't do it. Let me try this again. Ripple route 1 through 32 routes. Perfect. So you'll see here, record, send, and return is set up, and that'll be on every channel. So if we go back to our 32nd channel, there we go, route 32. So we're pretty much set up for virtual sound check now. What we need to do now is route our channels to the right groups. As I mentioned earlier, some things are faster on the console than they are on the offline. So now I can get two hands going and route all my channels. So I'll send my drums to the appropriate buses. I'm going to send my playback channels to my tracks bus. Click is not going to go anywhere. Bass is going to go into a bus I have called strings. The bass synth will go to my keys bus. Guitar goes to the strings bus. Keys go to keys, obviously, and my vocals to the vocal bus. Now, if I had more time, and not to say I don't right now, but what I would probably do is actually select pink noise as my input to every single channel and just quickly throw them up to make sure that every channel is going to the right place. It's just an extra step to ensure that it's done right. But I'm fairly confident we're okay. So in the name of time, we won't do that right now. But in an everyday scenario, I would definitely be doing that to make sure that all my routing is concrete and proper. Best to fix things like that in advance so that on a show day, you're not, trying to chase down a problem of why something's going to the wrong place. So that's all routed and set up. All we can do now is go ahead and listen to copied audio. So you'll see on the channel strip here, if I hit the listen to copied audio button, on every channel, it's going to take this route line from my source and jump it down to the recording return. So now instead of listening to the preamp, it's listening to the recording return and then going through the channel. Now it's really important, really important to note that if you are in listen to copied audio and it's listening to your recording return and you have a DAW set up that is record enabled, then you have made that a complete path. So your input from your stage rack will hit your console, go into the source, go to your recording send, out to your DAW, back into your recording return, and through your channel. So it is possible to get a really weird loop situation there and add a bunch of latency to your sound, and you'll be wondering what the heck's going on. I'm guilty of this, and it's just really important to always double check that. And also worth noting that when you do have the listen to copied audio on, it does bring in this tiny little tape icon that lives in the top of your channel. So you can see that coming on and going away. Really important to know what that is and know what it's doing, so you don't end up in that scenario. It's bit me a couple times, and you know, it happens. You learn from it and you move on. So that's set up. So if I go ahead and play on my DAW now, there we go. So you're now seeing input across all my channels via virtual soundcheck. So what we can do is let's go ahead and just push up my 2 kick channels here. We're just going to verify the routing. Go down to my routing. You can see my kick channels are both hitting my parallel bus. So if we go ahead and push these up, we should be hitting pretty much all of our buses there. Now our groups are down, so if I push these up, there we go. Hitting the master, and we're now making it all the way to the record bus. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and make sure that our route is set up just to a recording bus. So like I said, I'm using OBS to record this. It only listens to UB-MADI 1 and 2. It only listens to any USB input 1 and 2. So that's why I need to change this out. So for my record bus, which is going to my computer right now, we're just going to reset that to the UB-MADI 1 and 2. And again, that was overwritten because we did that ripple route on the record, send and return. So this is just something I'm doing for the sake of this demonstration. So if I go ahead and play my tracks and I push up these matrices, there you go. All right, so that's my template. That's my kind of basic workflow turned into a show. Ready to go out and start mixing, start doing some virtual sound checks, and start, you know, full on start a tour. Why not? I wish we could. So I'm gonna leave it there for this video. Hoping to come back with a second video soon here that's gonna go through my Waves integration, and hopefully some of the other detailed items of the console, including, you know, spill sets and control groups and kind of how I set those up. Yeah, so that's everything for now. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it, and really look forward to doing the next video, and we'll see you all soon.